what does the attorney general do? And I know that seems basic civics, but
Yeah.
let's go from there and then
Yeah.
build from that.
The attorney general is the state's chief law enforcement officer, but that is not just criminal statutes. In fact, that's an important role of the office, but it goes much broader than that. That is defending the state's environmental law, defending the state's consumer laws, making sure that people are protected in more ways than just criminal. Although, again, I want to be clear, that's an important part of this. So, like when the Norfolk Southern train derailment happened,
Yep.
that's something where the attorney general is going to be stepping in to hold Norfolk Southern accountable. That is, one example. The former Attorney General, now Governor Shapiro, what happened with the Catholic Church, and holding, various church officials accountable for abuse of individuals that had been buried for far too long. And even when it came to Governor Corbett, when he was the Attorney General, when it came to holding the legislature accountable for violating various public theft laws. So it runs the full gamut. It defends reproductive freedom. It defends, helps municipal. Here's another example. I know you're dealing with this in the Central Bucks School District. I take the First Amendment very seriously.
Yeah.
So these book bans are absolutely absurd. Well, who's the person that can step in and help fight back against some of those ridiculous book bans? And that's the Attorney General of Pennsylvania.
So you have your eyes on Central Bucks, is what you're saying?
I am noticing some of the activities in Central Bucks, and I mean, but I tell you this, and I tell this story when I'm on the trail. And that is, when I was in the sixth grade, I wanted to read the book Cujo. Now, in full disclosure, the book was great, the movie stunk, but the teacher said, "Hey, just make sure your mom's okay with it." So went back. My mom said, "Yeah, I want you to read." She didn't say, "Let's check with the governor on that." I
Yep.
mean, that should be a decision. Yeah, engaging the parents is appropriate. Engaging the governor or is ridiculous. And so, to me, I'm for kids reading, and I said that whether it was my kids when they were younger and now too. So, but that is something I'm certainly aware of that's going on in Central Bucks.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue here, and someone in chat said that the book is always better than the movie. So that may be
I'm not sure
true.
about Star Wars, but we'll debate that later
Yeah,
on.
we maybe we can. I'm reading
But
through the Lord
Steve,
of the Rings right now, so we'll see about that.
anything Stephen King was much better in book than on movie, though. Although Misery is pretty good.
I haven't seen it, but
Yeah.
I'm sure. Um, so let's I guess maybe when we talk, obviously we just elected Governor Shapiro in 2022. He previously served as the Attorney General. Now I'm not trying to get you in trouble here, but maybe what are some things that you might do differently than Governor Shapiro when he was Attorney General, and like maybe what would you kind of adopt in bringing forward from his kind of leadership in that role?
Yeah. So first of all, and you don't run for attorney general without knowing you're going to get into. If I serve 8 years, the idea of not getting into trouble at all during those 8 years, I don't mean me individually, but that's the
Yeah.
job, right? You've got to hold powerful people accountable. That's part of the job. So one thing I certainly come into, look, I think he helped redefine the office in a very good way. So he deserves all the credit in the world for that. And that's one of the reasons why, he's now the governor of the state beyond, just being a very tenacious, smart, diligent public servant. But look, I clearly come into this with a strong energy and environmental background. And that's something that would be a high priority for me. And also, I just think the times are different. If I'm the attorney general, the threats to democracy, look, I think he did a great job in 2020, but I think we're now much more aware that these threats to democracy and voting rights are going to be on a much more sustained attack, and having a plan to push back on that is going to be absolutely critical for myself if I'm the next attorney general. So those are things that are just when just you're looking at the world now. 2024 will just be different than getting elected attorney general in 2016. The threats to democracy are clear, and the final thing that not the final thing that would be different, but Roe being overturned.
Yeah.
The battle for reproductive freedom is clearly going to be moving forward. And in addition to that, with some of the horrible things that, when I say this, stuff that was on the public record from some of the people that were on the, in my view, the wrong side of the Dobbs decision, is that they're not done yet when it comes to, gender equality, when it comes to the LGBTQ community. I've got to be prepared to defend allies across the board in our schools and across our communities, that some of these battles we might have thought were already won, clearly they are not.
I got a question in chat that I'm gonna rephrase because I think it's asked a little silly, but and I'm saying that, not you. But uh, I guess with the issue specifically, I mean, crime is actually down this year compared to previous years in
Right.
many places, but with the rise of crime since, let's just say, COVID,
Yeah, right.
how is Attorney General? Let's just use Philadelphia. I mean, I'm wearing my Fell shirt. I go to UPenn.
Yeah.
Like how as Attorney General could you help uh, stop, lower, reduce crime, reduce violence
Yeah.
specifically moving forward?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I've got a daughter at Temple, so this is very personal to me. And I think a couple of things. First of all, you have to develop good relationships with the district attorneys across the state.
Hmm.
Yeah, you have to do your part to make sure that they're getting the resources they need from the attorney general's office, making sure we've got a great team. So that if a various district attorney doesn't have the resources to prosecute someone that's committed horrible acts of violence, making sure that I have the right team in place to hold those people accountable. So that's part of it. There's also the critical nature of there's too much gun violence. So we've got to find ways to crack down on gun violence. How do you do that? I think we've got to go after a lot of these straw purchasers, the people that are selling these guns illegally to too many people. So sometimes we'll hold the actual assailant accountable, and we should, but we've also got to trace that back to who's selling them the gun
Yep.
and hold that individual accountable too. So I think looking to that point of sale is going to be important. Now, if they didn't break the law, so be it. But a lot of those, you know, a lot of those gun sales are happening legal. We've got to go back to the point of sale as well. So that's something I'm going to take very seriously. There's also another part of my background that I think is important to note. And it's look, I've seen both sides of this criminal justice system. And I think, my dad was actually incarcerated. He was wounded in Vietnam, got addicted to painkillers. Synthetic heroin was prescribed him by the VA, which led to a 30-year battle with addiction. And he eventually was dealing as a result of that and had a 10 and a half year prison sentence. So many, not all, so many of these crimes relate back to the most failed war in the history of the United States, and that's the war on drugs. And so I've seen both sides of this. And again, if you harm a child, if you harm anybody with guns, I want to be clear, violence is, will always be held accountable. But if you are a nonviolent drug addict, I think we've got to take a different approach on how we're dealing with this because clearly just locking up people that are addicted and throwing away the key has not worked to reduce drug usage. So, and that eventually leads to other crimes. So to me, I think, holding violent criminals accountable, absolutely. But when it comes to nonviolent, particularly on drug offenses, we have to take new approaches to this. We need to get people treatment. And then particularly on the guns, we got to go to the point of sale.